In about 10 minutes, a grizzly is going to step out of the brush upstream and cover the distance between you faster than you would believe something that size can move. And the back of your skull is going to carry a raised ridge of scar tissue for the rest of your life where her teeth went in. Minute 0. The creek is running cold and fast the way it does in September after the rain, and you can already smell the salmon before you see them. That flat, heavy, almost rotten smell that rises off the water when the fish are stacking up to spawn. Part river and part something about to turn. You've been waiting upstream for about an hour, picking your way across the slicker rocks in the shallows. Fly rod up, reading the current for the pools where fish hold. Your buddy is working a stretch about 40 yards behind you, and you can hear him every few minutes over the noise of the water. The mountains on both sides are loaded with color this time of year. The aspen's gone pale yellow, the timber dark green all the way to the ridgeline, and the canyon walls keep the wind out, which is good because the temperature is probably in the low 40s, and the water pulling at your waders is colder than that. You've been coming into this drainage for 3 years. You know there are grizzlies out here. You saw fresh diggings on the trail in, big pits torn out of the hillside, and a print in the mud at the first crossing that you looked at for a while before you kept going. You have bear spray clipped to the left strap of your vest. You've been scanning both banks all morning, which is what you do out here, and you feel prepared the way that people who feel prepared often do right before they stop being prepared. The brush on the left bank is thick right where the creek bends, a solid wall of willow and alder coming down to the water. And when you wade around that bend, you are 20 feet from the bear, before either of you knows the other is there. She's at the water's edge with a salmon, and she comes straight up on her back legs, and the salmon falls, and she is looking at you with her nose working and her ears flat back against her skull. You stop moving. You start talking low and slow and steady, your own voice sounding strange and foreign, too calm, something you're performing, and you start reaching for the spray with your right hand, keeping your eyes on her, giving her space. Most charges stop. You know the numbers. She drops to all fours and the rocks at the water's edge shift under her weight, and she lowers her head and comes. She covers 20 feet in the time it takes you to get the spray half unclipped. The impact is not like being hit. It's like the world resorts itself. You're standing and then you're in the water, and the cold goes through every layer instantly. The shock of it, total and immediate. And there is something on your left shoulder that has the muscle there in its mouth and is shaking. And the rocks come up at your face in flashes, your cheek, your temple, and the sound underwater is a low roar, and the pain in your shoulder is everything at once, and then it releases and you're face down in the shallows. You don't move. You press your face against the rocks and you go as limp as you can make yourself, which is not very limp because every part of you wants to do the opposite, and you wait. She's still there. You can feel the pressure in the water when she steps, hear her breathing over the creek, wet and heavy and close. And then her weight comes down across your upper back and her claws drag across the muscle there. 4 lines from your shoulder blade down towards your ribs, and then she bites the back of your head and the world goes wide and long and far away. Your buddy's voice is what brings you back. He's yelling from downstream, loud and repetitive, and the spray hisses and the bear leaves through the brush so fast you hear the branches cracking all the way up the hillside and then just the creek. That's the whole thing from her side of it. She got surprised at close range. She dealt with it the way she's been dealing with threats her whole life. And when the threat went still and something else started yelling, she left. 10,000 years of exactly that, and then nothing. Minute 8. He reaches you in under a minute. You push yourself up with your right arm, and the left arm doesn't respond the way you're asking it to. There's movement, but it's the wrong kind. Something loose in the shoulder joint that isn't supposed to be loose, and trying to move it sends a spike through the whole left side of your neck and into your jaw. You sit back on the bank. You don't need to see his face to understand the situation, but you see it anyway. He presses both hands to the back of your head, and the pressure is nauseating, but you don't ask him to ease up because you know why he's pressing. The scalp has more blood supply running through it than almost anywhere else on the body. Tight vessels right under the skin, wall to wall. And even with both his hands pressing hard, he goes through the first bandage and into the second within 2 minutes. He works through what you have between you. 2 bandages on the head, secured with a strip of pack strap looped twice and tied. 4 claw lacerations across your back, open through the base layer and into the muscle. And he packs the deepest one with gauze and tapes it. There is nothing more to tape with after that. Your left shoulder sits wrong inside the jacket. You look at it once and look away. He pulls the satellite communicator off his pack and sends an SOS ping. It goes out. Response in a drainage this remote, he says, won't be less than 4 hours. Probably more. He says it the way you say something that's a fact and not a comfort, and you nod. 6 miles to the truck, 800 feet of climbing on the way out. You tell him to hand you your rod to use as a pole, and he thinks about arguing and doesn't, and you get your feet under you. Hour 1. The first 2 miles follow the creek and you move through them, slow but moving. Your buddy stays a half step behind on your left with his hand on your elbow, and you keep the left arm locked to your body because any swing of it sends the pain up into your eye socket on that side. The claw marks across your back work through 2 phases in this first hour. Burning first, a pulling drag on every inhale, and then the outer edges go cold and numb while the center stays sharp on every exhale. And the blood that soaked your base layer is now cold fabric against your skin and it doesn't warm up. The temperature is falling, you can feel it on your face. There's a creek crossing near the 2-mile mark, a row of flat rocks across a fast narrow section, maybe 6 feet of water, that you hopped without thinking on the way in. You stand at the edge and look at the spacing and it looks different now. Not farther apart but less certain, and your buddy crosses first and reaches back and takes your right arm, and you step across deliberately, 1 rock at a time, and you make it. A quarter mile past the crossing, a downed spruce has fallen across the trail, about 2 feet off the ground. Your buddy gets over first and reaches back for you, and you get your right leg over and then the left, 1 at a time, and the left doesn't quite clear on the second try, and you catch the log at the shin and pitch forward, and he catches you, and you stand there for a moment with your forehead against a tree. You keep moving. The trail starts climbing after the log. What blood loss does to legs is not pain. You were expecting pain and it doesn't work that way. What comes is weight, a feeling like your legs are being asked to move through something thicker than air. And on the first switchback of the ridge climb, you stop twice without planning to, your body just halting while your mind is still telling it to go. Your buddy asks about your vision and you tell him the truth. The edges are fine. It's just that the trail in front of you wants to drift a few degrees sideways, and you have to keep correcting for it. He doesn't say anything to that. He stays where he is, half a step behind. Halfway up the climb, there is a 20-yard section of loose rock where the trail stops being a trail and becomes a suggestion. And you pick across it with his hands on the back of your jacket and you make it. And then on the other side of it, you feel almost okay for about 2 minutes. A real specific lifting, the kind where you think maybe the worst of it has passed. Then the legs get heavier again. The trail keeps climbing. Hour 3. Near the top of the ridge, you sit down on a rock before you decide to. You notice the sitting is arriving before the decision, which is information. Your buddy crouches in front of you and moves his finger, and he can see the lag that you can also feel. The half-second delay between his finger moving right and your eyes catching up. He checks the communicator. SOS received. They're working on it. No ETAA. He stands up and looks back down the trail toward where the truck is parked, and he asks if he should run ahead, get to the truck, drive out to where there's signal, come back with help, or send it. You sit with that. The light through the trees is going gold and flat, which means late afternoon, which means cold coming fast, which means the 2 miles of descent in front of you are going to be done in lowering light. You tell him no. You tell him you're going to walk out. He puts his jacket over your shoulders on top of your own, and you don't argue with that. The last 2 miles are downhill, and that helps some. What it doesn't help is the steep, loose rock section on the descent, which is worse going down than up because each step has to be placed rather than taken. And your buddy is behind you with both hands out on those parts. Not holding you, just there. You don't fall. There are 2 moments where you feel like you will, and you don't. You don't remember the last mile as a single continuous thing. You remember light and dark through the pines, alternating as you move. You remember looking down at some point and seeing blood on the outside of your boot and not knowing when that started. You remember the truck appearing between the trees, completely ordinary, sitting where you left it, and the feeling of getting the door open and getting inside. Your buddy drives the 8 miles of dirt road out faster than it wants to be driven, and it takes 20 minutes, and every rut goes through the shoulder and up into your head, and you brace against the door handle with your right hand. The cell bars come back at the highway, all 4 of them at once, and you make the call, get directions, and let him drive. Surgery is 4 hours. The muscle in your left shoulder is torn through in layers, and they rebuild it in layers. The wound on the back of your skull goes to the bone and needs to be closed in stages. And the bone itself has a crack, not a collapse, a crack, that the surgeon says should heal on its own, which you understand is supposed to sound better than some alternatives. The 4 lines across your back take the longest. The cleaning out goes on a long time because of what lives in a grizzly's claws, what it digs up and tears apart every day of its life. And a week later, the infection arrives anyway, a fever that runs high enough to put you back in a hospital bed for 2 days. An older person, the ER doctor mentions at some point without being asked, or someone smaller, might not have walked out of that drainage. She says it the way doctors say things that happen to be true. 3 weeks later, the shoulder comes back mostly. There's a band of muscle below the blade that doesn't fire the way it used to, and you feel it whenever you need to lift and reach at the same time, which turns out to be more things than you expected. The 4 lines across your back are raised and permanent. The scar on the back of your head is a hard ridge where the hair grows to either side but not through it, and you can feel it when your fingers go back there, which they still do sometimes without you deciding to put them there. You went back to that drainage the following September. You fished it for 3 days and caught fish. The creek looked exactly the way it always looks, cold and fast and smelling like salmon. And on the last morning, you worked a section upstream toward a bend in the left bank where the willows and alder come down thick to the water, and the creek was loud enough to cover anything, and your right hand went to the spray on your hip before any other part of you made any decision at all. You still look at the brush before you look at the water. You do it on every bend now. You can't not. And that's it for today's survival adventure stories. That was pretty crazy, right? Well, it gets worse. The next story is even scarier than this one. You really need to see it. Just click the video right now. You won't believe what happens.